In the heart of a sprawling city where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and luxury cars glided along pristine streets, there existed another world. A world hidden in plain sight but often ignored by those who hurried past with their heads down, or their eyes glued to screens. Beneath one of the many bridges that connected the wealthy parts of the city to its industrial zones, two young women huddled together under a patchwork of old blankets and cardboard. These were Mia and Ava, twin, sisters bound not just by blood but by an unshakable bond forged through years of hardship. Mia and Ava had once known a different life. They grew up in a modest home filled with laughter, love, and warmth. Their parents worked hard to provide for them, always reminding the girls that family was everything. But tragedy struck when they were teenagers. A car accident claimed both, their parents' lives, leaving the twins orphaned and alone. With no close relatives willing to take them in, they bounced between foster homes until eventually aging out of the system altogether. By then, they had learned to rely on each other, and only each other, for survival. Life on the streets wasn't kind. The nights were cold, the days long, and the constant struggle for food and shelter never ending. Yet despite their circumstances, Mia and Ava refused to let despair consume them. They found joy in small things. Sharing a stale loaf of bread, they'd scavenged from behind a bakery, laughing at silly jokes while sitting cross-legged on their makeshift bed, or watching the helicopters that frequently flew overhead. Those helicopters became a source of fascination for the twins. To them, the machines represented freedom, a way to rise above the chaos below and escape to somewhere better. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Mia and Ava would sit side by side, gazing upward. "Do you think we'll ever ride in one?" Ava asked one day, her voice tinged with wonder. Mia smiled faintly, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. "Maybe someday," she replied. "But even if we don't, it's nice to dream, right?" Little did they know, fate had something extraordinary in store for them, something that would change their lives forever. On this particular afternoon, as the twins rested beneath their bridge, the distant hum of helicopter blades caught their attention. It wasn't unusual to hear aircraft passing overhead, but this sound was different. Instead of fading into the distance, it grew louder, sharper, almost frantic. Mia squinted toward the sky, shielding her eyes against the bright sunlight. "That doesn't sound right," she murmured, nudging Ava gently. Ava looked up too, her brow furrowing in concern. The helicopter appeared smaller than usual, its movements jerky and erratic. For a moment, it seemed to hover uncertainly before tilting dangerously to one side. Then, without warning, it began descending rapidly, trailing, smoke like a wounded bird spiraling toward the earth. The twins gasped in unison, frozen in place as they watched the terrifying scene unfold. High above the city, in a penthouse perched atop one of the tallest buildings, billionaire Adrian Cross stood silently on his balcony. He was a man accustomed to observing life from a distance. While others mingled at parties or attended charity galas, Adrian preferred solitude, retreating to his fortress-like home where he could watch the world go by without being part of it. Through his expensive binoculars, he scanned the horizon, taking note of the bustling activity below, the people rushing to catch buses, the delivery trucks weaving through traffic, the occasional jogger navigating the crowded sidewalks. When the helicopter first appeared in his line of sight, Adrian barely registered it. Such sights were common in the city after all. But then he noticed something odd about its trajectory. The craft wobbled unnaturally, its engine sputtering as though struggling to stay airborne. Intrigued, Adrian adjusted the focus of his binoculars, zooming in closer, and that's when he saw them, the twin sisters standing near the bridge pointing upward with expressions of shock and alarm. Adrian leaned forward slightly, his curiosity piqued. Who were these two women? What were they doing so close to danger? As the helicopter plummeted toward the ground, his mind raced with questions. Something told him this moment was significant, not just because of the impending crash, but because of the role these strangers might play in what came next. Meanwhile, back on the ground, Mia and Ava sprang into action. Instinctively, they grabbed their few belongings and ran toward the crash site, their hearts pounding in sync. Smoke billowed into the air as flames licked hungrily at the wreckage. The acrid smell of burning metal filled their nostrils, making it hard to breathe. Despite the danger, the twins pressed on, driven by a sense of purpose neither fully understood. As they approached the smoldering remains of the helicopter, they braced themselves for the worst. Surely no one could have survived such a catastrophic impact. But then, amidst the chaos, they heard it. A faint cry. It was soft, almost imperceptible over the roar of the fire and the distant wail of approaching sirens. Yet it was unmistakably human. Exchanging a glance, Mia and Ava moved cautiously closer. Peering through the haze, they spotted a cradle-like device partially shielded by debris. Inside lay a baby, miraculously unharmed, clutching a tiny stuffed animal in one hand. Tears welled up in Ava's eyes as she reached out to lift the infant from the carrier. "She's alive," she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. Mia quickly unwrapped a threadbare blanket from around her shoulders and draped it over the baby, shielding her from the biting wind. The child whimpered softly but soon quieted, seemingly comforted by the warmth and presence of the two strangers. For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still as Mia and Ava stared at the tiny miracle in their arms. How could something so fragile survive such devastation? Adrian, still watching from afar, felt a strange stirring within him. He had seen countless tragedies unfold during his years of observation, yet this felt different. There was something profoundly moving about the image of two homeless women risking their lives to save a child who wasn't theirs. It made him question everything he thought he knew about humanity and himself. By the time emergency vehicles arrived, lights flashing and sirens blaring, Mia and Ava were already contemplating their next move. They couldn't simply hand the baby over to strangers. They needed answers. And as fate would have it, Adrian Cross was about to step into their lives in ways none of them could have anticipated. The helicopter's descent was nothing short of catastrophic. As it spiraled out of control, the deafening roar of its failing engine echoed across the desolate field where it eventually crashed. Flames erupted almost instantly, consuming the wreckage in a fiery inferno that sent thick black smoke billowing into the sky. The scene was chaos, loud, terrifying, and surreal. Onlookers who had been nearby scrambled to safety, their faces pale with shock. Some screamed for help while others stood frozen, unable to comprehend the horror unfolding before them. Mia and Ava, however, didn't hesitate. While everyone else retreated, the twin sisters ran toward the flames, propelled by instincts they couldn't explain. Their hearts pounded wildly as they approached the crash site, their feet crunching over broken glass and charred debris. The heat from the fire singed their skin, but they barely noticed. All they could think about was whether anyone inside the helicopter had survived. "Stay close," Mia shouted over the roar of the blaze, her voice hoarse but firm. She grabbed Ava's hand tightly, ensuring neither of them lost sight of the other. Together they navigated the treacherous terrain, their eyes scanning the wreckage for any sign of life. Every step felt like an eternity, each second stretching longer than the last. The air was thick with smoke, making it hard to breathe, but the twins pressed on, driven by a sense of purpose neither fully understood. And then, amidst the devastation, they heard it, a faint sound so soft it could have been mistaken for the wind. But it wasn't the wind. It was a cry. A baby's cry. Ava froze, her breath catching in her throat. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, turning to Mia with wide, disbelieving eyes. Mia nodded sharply, already moving toward the source of the sound. They pushed through the wreckage, ignoring the sharp edges of metal and shards of glass cutting into their hands as they clawed their way forward. Finally, they found it. A small carrier, miraculously intact despite the destruction surrounding it. Inside lay a tiny infant wrapped snugly in a blanket, clutching a stuffed bunny in one tiny fist. The baby's face was streaked with soot, but otherwise she appeared unharmed. Her cries were weak, almost pitiful, yet they carried a weight that struck deep into the twins' hearts. Without a word, Ava reached down and carefully lifted the child from the carrier, cradling her gently against her chest. The baby whimpered softly, her little body trembling. But soon she began to calm, as if sensing the warmth and safety offered by these strangers. Mia quickly unwrapped the tattered blanket she'd been carrying and draped it around the baby, shielding her from the biting cold and the oppressive heat of the fire. "She's alive," Ava murmured, her voice trembling with awe and disbelief. Tears streamed down her cheeks, mixing with the grime on her face. "How is this even possible?" Mia didn't answer. She simply stared at the child, her mind racing. This wasn't just a baby, it was a miracle. Amidst all the death and destruction, here was a spark of hope, a fragile reminder that life could endure even in the darkest moments. For a brief instant, the world seemed to fade away, leaving only the three of them, Mia, Ava, and the baby. High above the chaos, Adrian Cross watched everything unfold with bated breath. From his penthouse balcony, he observed the scene through his binoculars, his grip tightening on the sleek device as he took in every detail. He saw the flames engulfing the helicopter, the panicked crowd scattering in all directions, and then, there they were, the twin sisters running toward danger when everyone else fled. Adrian's curiosity transformed into something deeper, something he hadn't felt in years: awe. These two women, dressed in worn clothes and covered in dirt, were risking their lives for a stranger's child. What drove them to do such a thing? Was it courage, desperation, or perhaps something more profound, something innate within them that refused to turn away from suffering? As the twins emerged from the wreckage with the baby in their arms, Adrian lowered his binoculars, his thoughts swirling. Who were they? Where did they come from? And why did their actions stir something buried deep within him, something he had long ignored? For years, Adrian had lived in isolation, content to observe the world from afar rather than participate in it. His wealth afforded him every luxury imaginable, but it also created a barrier between him and the rest of humanity. People flocked to him for favors or funding, but few truly knew him. In truth, he preferred it that way. Yet now, watching the selflessness of these two strangers, he felt an unfamiliar pang of longing. Longing not for connection, not exactly, but for meaning. Meaning that money and success alone could never provide. Determined to learn more, Adrian decided to investigate further. He changed out of his tailored suit into plain clothes, blending in with the growing crowd of onlookers gathering near the crash site. Emergency vehicles had arrived by then, their sirens wailing as paramedics and firefighters worked to contain the blaze. Reporters swarmed the area, microphones in hand, eager to capture footage of the tragedy. Amidst the commotion, Adrian spotted the twins standing off to the side, still holding the baby protectively. He approached cautiously, not wanting to startle them. Up close, he could see the toll their ordeal had taken, their faces smudged with soot, their hands raw and blistered from navigating the wreckage. Despite their disheveled appearance, there was a quiet strength about them, an unspoken resolve that commanded respect. "Excuse me," Adrian said softly, stepping forward. His voice was calm but authoritative, drawing their attention immediately. Mia and Ava turned to face him, their expressions wary but not hostile. "My name is Adrian Cross," he continued. I saw what you did back there. You saved a life today." The twins exchanged a glance, unsure how to respond. They weren't accustomed to praise, especially not from someone like him, someone who clearly came from a very different world. "We didn't do anything special," Mia replied finally, her tone guarded. "Anyone would have done the same." Adrian shook his head. "No, they wouldn't have. Believe me, I've seen enough to know that." He paused, studying their faces intently. "Look, I understand this must be overwhelming for you, but I want to help. Whatever you need, resources, support, I can make it happen." Ava frowned, clutching the baby tighter. "Why are you offering to help us?" she asked suspiciously. "You don't even know us." Adrian hesitated, searching for the right words. "Maybe because I should have done more for people like you, a long time ago," he admitted quietly. And maybe because what you did today reminded me that some things are worth fighting for. His sincerity caught them off guard. After a moment of silence, Mia nodded slowly. Okay, she said. But we need answers first. Whose baby is this? Why was she on that helicopter? We can't just hand her over without knowing. Adrian agreed, impressed by their determination to do the right thing. Together, they stepped away from the chaos, finding a quiet corner where they could talk privately. As they walked, Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was no accident. Something greater than coincidence had brought them together, and he suspected it was only the beginning of a journey none of them could have anticipated. The small diner was tucked away on a quiet street, far removed from the chaos of the crash site. Its neon sign flickered faintly in the evening light, casting a warm glow over the cracked pavement outside. Inside, the air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and buttery toast, mingling with the faint hum of conversation from a handful of patrons scattered around the room. For Mia and Ava, this simple setting felt almost surreal after the events of the day. Their hands were still raw from navigating the wreckage, their clothes stained with soot and dirt, but they sat at a corner booth with an air of quiet determination. Across from them, Adrian Cross sipped his black coffee, his sharp eyes studying the twins intently. He wasn't used to being in places like this, modest diners where the furniture was worn and the menu consisted of greasy comfort food, but he didn't seem out of place either. There was something about him that commanded attention without demanding it, a quiet confidence that made people instinctively trust him. Still, Mia and Ava remained cautious. They had learned long ago not to take anyone's promises at face value, no matter how sincere they sounded. So, Mia began, breaking the silence as she adjusted the blanket around the baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. You said you'd help us figure out what happened. Start talking. Adrian leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. He admired their directness, the way they refused to let fear or exhaustion dictate their actions. All right, he said, folding his hands on the table. Here's what I know. The helicopter belonged to a wealthy entrepreneur named Victor Langston. He and his wife, Elena, were traveling to finalize adoption papers for their first child, a baby girl. His gaze softened as he glanced at the infant. That baby. Ava's breath hitched, her fingers tightening reflexively around the edge of the blanket. They were adopting her? She whispered, her voice barely audible over the clatter of dishes in the background. Yes, Adrian confirmed. From what I understand, the biological mother chose them specifically because of their reputation for kindness and generosity. Everything was set. The legal process was nearly complete. This trip was supposed to be the final step before bringing the baby home. Mia frowned, her brow furrowing in confusion. But why were they flying instead of driving? Helicopters aren't exactly safe. They were in a hurry, Adrian explained. Victor had a business meeting scheduled later that evening, and Elena didn't want to delay introducing their daughter to her new family any longer than necessary. Unfortunately, he trailed off, letting the unspoken implication hang heavy in the air. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of the situation settled over them like a thick fog. Mia stared down at the baby, her heart aching at the thought of what might have been. This little girl had narrowly escaped death, only to lose the parents who had dreamed of raising her. What kind of future awaited her now? Would she grow up knowing the love and care her adoptive parents had envisioned for her? What happens to her now? Ava asked finally, her voice tinged with both hope and dread. Will she go back to whoever was handling the adoption? Adrian hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Technically, yes. The courts will likely honor the original agreement unless there's a compelling reason not to. But given the circumstances, he paused, glancing between the twins. Well, it's complicated. Mia's jaw tightened. Complicated how? Because of you two, Adrian admitted. You saved her life. That counts for something. Not just legally, but morally. If you wanted to fight for custody, I'm sure we could build a strong case. But I need to ask, are you prepared for that? Raising a child isn't easy under the best of conditions, and your current situation... His voice trailed off, leaving the question hanging unfinished. It wasn't judgmental, merely practical. Yet it stung all the same. Mia and Ava exchanged a glance, their shared pain visible in the tension around their eyes. They knew he was right. As much as they loved the idea of giving this baby a home, they couldn't ignore the harsh reality of their lives. How could they provide for her when they struggled to provide for themselves? "We're not saying we don't want her," Ava said quickly, her tone defensive. We need to think about what's best for her, not us." Mia nodded in agreement, her gaze softening as she looked down at the sleeping infant. "She deserves a good life," she murmured. "A safe home, stability, opportunities we could never give her." Adrian studied them silently, his respect for the twins growing with each passing second. Most people in their position would have jumped at the chance to claim the baby, using her as a means to escape poverty. But Mia and Ava weren't thinking about themselves. They were thinking about her needs, her future, her happiness. It was a level of selflessness that few possessed, and Adrian found himself deeply moved by it. "I can make sure she gets everything she deserves," he said finally, his voice steady but gentle. "If you decide to let the original adoptive family take her, I'll ensure they honor your role in saving her life. She'll grow up knowing what you did for her. And if you ever want to be part of her life, whether as godparents, mentors, or simply friends, I can arrange that too." The twins exchanged another glance, their emotions swirling like storm clouds. On one hand, the thought of letting her go tore at their hearts. She had come into their lives so unexpectedly, filling a void they hadn't realized existed. On the other hand, they knew deep down that keeping her wouldn't be fair. Not to her, not to the family who had waited years for this moment, and not to themselves. After what felt like an eternity, Mia sighed heavily, her shoulders slumping in resignation. "We'll do it," she said quietly. "We'll let them take her. But we want your word, Adrian. Your promise that she'll have the life she deserves." "You have it," Adrian replied without hesitation. "I'll make sure of it." Relief washed over Ava's face, though tears glistened in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly, "for believing in us, for helping us make the right choice." Adrian shook his head, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Don't thank me. You're the ones making the sacrifice here. I'm just trying to honor it." As the conversation drew to a close, the weight of their decision lingered in the air. For Mia and Ava, letting go of the baby meant closing a chapter they hadn't even realized had begun, but it also opened the door to something new, a chance to rebuild their lives, to dream again, to believe that maybe, just maybe, fate had brought them to this moment for a reason beyond the obvious. And for Adrian, watching these two women put someone else's needs above their own reignited a spark within him, a desire to reconnect with the world in a way he hadn't allowed himself to in years. Little did any of them know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would change all their lives forever. The days that followed were a blur of emotions for Mia and Ava. They had made the hardest decision of their lives, choosing to entrust the baby to the adoptive family who had been waiting for her. Yet, despite knowing it was the right thing to do, the weight of their choice lingered like a shadow over every moment. Each time they closed their eyes, they saw her face, the tiny features framed by wisps of soft hair, the trusting gaze that seemed to see straight into their souls. Letting her go felt like tearing a piece of themselves away. Adrian Cross kept his promise. He worked tirelessly behind the scenes, ensuring that the adoption process moved forward smoothly while honoring the twins' role in saving the baby's life. He arranged meetings with lawyers, social workers, and representatives from the adoption agency, all of whom marveled at Mia and Ava's selflessness. "You don't see this kind of compassion every day," one of the caseworkers remarked during a particularly emotional session. "What you've done, it's extraordinary." But even as they navigated the legalities, Adrian knew the twins needed more than just words of gratitude. Their sacrifice deserved tangible support, something that would allow them to rebuild their lives with dignity and hope. So he devised a plan. one that would change everything for Mia and Ava, without making them feel beholden to him or anyone else. One crisp morning, Adrian invited the sisters to meet him at a modest apartment located on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't luxurious by any means, but it was clean, safe, and filled with sunlight streaming through large windows. The walls were freshly painted, and the furniture was simple yet sturdy. A couch, a dining table, 2 beds, and a small kitchenette stocked with essentials. A handwritten note rested on the counter. "Welcome home." Mia and Ava stood frozen in the doorway, their expressions a mix of disbelief and awe. Is this ours?" Ava stammered, her voice trembling. Adrian nodded, his hands tucked casually into his pockets. "It's yours," he confirmed. "Rent-free for the next year. After that, if you decide to stay, I'll help you find stable jobs so you can afford it yourself. But for now, consider it a fresh start." Tears welled up in Mia's eyes as she stepped inside, running her fingers over the smooth surface of the dining table. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly, turning to face him. "We didn't ask for this." "Because you deserve it," Adrian replied simply. "And because the world needs more people like you, people who put others first, even when it costs them everything. This isn't charity, it's an investment in you, in your future, and in the lives you'll touch moving forward." Ava hugged herself tightly, trying to process what was happening. For years, she and Mia had survived on scraps, sleeping under bridges and scavenging for food. Now, here they were, standing in a real home, a place where they could heal, dream, and begin again. It felt surreal, almost too good to be true. Over the following weeks, Adrian continued to support the twins in ways both big and small. He enrolled them in vocational training programs tailored to their interests. Mia excelled at graphic design, while Ava discovered a passion for culinary arts and connected them with mentors who guided them through their studies. He also ensured they received financial assistance to cover basic necessities, allowing them to focus on their education without worrying about survival. Yet, as much as these opportunities transformed their lives, the emotional toll of letting go of the baby remained ever present. Nights were the hardest. The silence of their new apartment often reminded them of the soft coos and gentle whimpers that had once filled their days. They missed her fiercely, but they refused to let grief consume them. Instead, they channeled their pain into action, using it as fuel to create better lives not just for themselves but for others like them. Meanwhile, Adrian found himself reflecting deeply on his own life. Watching Mia and Ava navigate their journey with such resilience and grace forced him to confront the emptiness he had long ignored within himself. For years, he had hidden behind his wealth and influence, observing the world from a distance, rather than participating in it. But now, inspired by the twins' courage, he began taking steps toward change. He started small, volunteering at shelters and community centers, listening to stories of struggle and survival. Slowly, he expanded, his efforts funding initiatives aimed at helping homeless individuals gain access to housing, education, and job training. His actions weren't driven by guilt or obligation. They came from a genuine desire to make a difference, to honor the spirit of compassion he had witnessed in Mia and Ava. Months passed, and the bond between Adrian and the twins grew stronger. What had begun as a chance encounter at a crash site blossomed into a friendship built on mutual respect and shared purpose. They checked in on each other regularly, sharing updates about their progress and offering encouragement whenever it was needed. To Mia and Ava, Adrian became more than just a benefactor. He was a mentor, a confidant, and, in many ways, a friend. Then, one day, a letter arrived at the twins' apartment. It was addressed to both of them, written in elegant handwriting on creamy stationery. Inside, they found a heartfelt message from Elena Langston, the adoptive mother whose dreams of raising a child had nearly been shattered by tragedy. She thanked them profusely for saving her daughter's life and included several photographs of the baby, now thriving and smiling brightly in her new home. "She looks happy," Ava whispered, clutching the photos tightly as tears streamed. down her face. That's all we ever wanted for her. Mia nodded, her throat tight with emotion. She's going to have such a beautiful life, she said. And she'll always know that we were there for her when she needed us most. As they sat together, poring over the pictures and imagining the little girl growing up surrounded by love and care, a sense of peace settled over them. They had given her the greatest gift they could offer, a chance at happiness, and in return she had given them something equally precious: purpose. For Adrian, seeing the twins embrace their new chapter reinforced his belief in the power of second chances. He realized that destiny had brought them together not just to save a life, but to remind him, and everyone else involved, that humanity's strength lies in its capacity to care, to sacrifice, and to rebuild. And though their paths had diverged, their connection remained unbreakable, woven together by threads of kindness, courage, and hope. Little did they know, their story was far from over. The impact of their choices would ripple outward, touching countless lives in ways none of them could have anticipated. But for now, they were content to move forward, one step at a time, carrying the lessons they had learned and the love they had shared into whatever lay ahead. Years had passed since that fateful day when the helicopter crashed, changing the lives of Mia, Ava, and Adrian forever. The city around them continued to grow and evolve, its skyline stretching higher and its streets bustling with activity. But for the twins and the billionaire who had crossed paths under extraordinary circumstances, life had taken on a deeper meaning, one rooted in purpose, connection, and the belief that even the smallest acts of kindness could spark monumental change. Mia and Ava thrived in their new lives. Their training programs had transformed into successful careers. Mia became a sought-after graphic designer known for her bold, emotive work, while Ava opened a small cafe that quickly became a neighborhood favorite. The cozy space was filled with warmth, from the aroma of freshly baked bread to the vibrant murals painted by Mia herself. Together they created something beautiful, a testament to their resilience and determination. But success wasn't just about personal achievements. For the twins, they used their platform to give back to the community that had once been their home. Every month they hosted free meals at a local shelter, inviting anyone in need to sit down and share a hot meal. "It's not much," Ava often said humbly, wiping flour from her hands as she served plates of pasta and pie, "but it's what we can do." To those who came, it meant the world. Their efforts didn't stop there. Inspired by their own struggles, Mia and Ava founded a nonprofit organization called Rising Wings, dedicated to helping homeless individuals gain access to education, job training, and affordable housing. The name held special significance. It was a nod to the helicopters they used to watch as children, symbols of hope and freedom. Through partnerships with local businesses and volunteers, Rising Wings grew rapidly, touching hundreds of lives and earning recognition across the city. Adrian Cross, too, underwent a profound transformation. Once a recluse content to observe, life from afar, he had become an active participant in shaping a better future. His philanthropic endeavors expanded beyond financial contributions. He rolled up his sleeves, volunteering alongside the very people he aimed to help. Whether it was serving meals at shelters or mentoring young entrepreneurs, Adrian found joy in connecting with others in ways he never thought possible. His relationship with Mia and Ava remained a cornerstone of his journey. Though their lives were busy, they made time for each other, meeting regularly to discuss their progress and dreams. These gatherings weren't formal meetings, but heartfelt conversations over coffee or shared meals at Ava's cafe. Laughter and tears flowed freely as they reflected on how far they'd come and how much further they hoped to go. One crisp autumn afternoon, nearly 5 years after the crash, Mia and Ava received another letter. This one came with no warning, arriving in a plain white envelope tucked among bills and flyers. Inside was a handwritten note and a photograph. The photo showed a bright-eyed little girl, now 5 years old, standing in a sunlit garden surrounded by flowers. Her smile lit up the page, and in her arms, she clutched the same stuffed bunny she had held on the day of the crash. The note read, "Dear Mia and Ava, I hope this letter finds you well. Words cannot express how grateful I am for what you did that day. You saved my daughter's life, and in doing so, you gave me the gift of motherhood. We think of you often and talk about you frequently. She calls you her guardian angels." Enclosed is a recent picture of her. We wanted you to see how happy and healthy she is. Thank you for your selflessness and love. You will always hold a special place in our hearts. With gratitude, Elena Langston. Tears streamed down both sisters' faces as they stared at the photo. It was surreal to see the baby they had saved all grown up, her laughter captured forever in a single moment. For all the challenges they had faced, for every sleepless night spent wondering if they had made the right choice, this letter brought clarity. They had done the right thing, not just for the child, but for themselves. Their sacrifice had allowed them to grow, to heal, and to create a legacy of compassion that extended far beyond one act of bravery. That evening, they invited Adrian to join them at the cafe to share the news. Sitting together at a corner table, they passed the photo around, marveling at the miracle of it all. "She looks just like her mom," Ava said softly, tracing the edge of the photograph with her finger. "But she has his nose." Adrian chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief. "You know," he said, leaning back in his chair, "when I first saw you two running toward that crash site, I never imagined it would lead to this. Look at everything you've accomplished. Look at the lives you've changed, including mine." Mia smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We couldn't have done any of it without you, Adrian. You gave us a chance when no one else would, and because of that, we were able to keep going." "It wasn't just me," Adrian replied firmly. "It was you. Your strength, your courage. It inspired me to step out of my comfort zone. I owe you as much as anyone else does." As the conversation turned to plans for the future, the trio shared ideas for expanding Rising Wings and reaching even more communities. There was talk of opening additional shelters, launching educational workshops, and collaborating with schools to provide mentorship programs for at-risk youth. Each idea sparked excitement, fueling their shared vision of a brighter, kinder world. The years that followed, the story of the twin sisters, the billionaire and the baby, became legend. News outlets picked up on their journey, highlighting the impact of Rising Wings and the ripple effect of their actions. People were moved by the tale of sacrifice, redemption, and second chances, a reminder that humanity's greatest strength lay in its ability to care for one another. For Mia and Ava, the attention was bittersweet. While they appreciated the recognition, their focus remained on the work itself. "It's not about us," Mia often reminded reporters during interviews. "It's about everyone who deserves a chance to rise above their circumstances. That's what Rising Wings is all about." As for Adrian, he continued to use his resources to uplift marginalized communities, channeling his wealth into causes that aligned with his newfound values. He often joked that the twins had ruined him for a life of detachment, but there was truth in his words. By stepping into their world, he had discovered a sense of fulfillment money alone could never buy. And so, the story came full circle, not as an ending, but as a beginning. The bond between Mia, Ava, and Adrian stood as proof that destiny sometimes brings people together not just to save a life, but to transform countless others. Through their courage, compassion, and unwavering belief in the power of love, they proved that even in the darkest moments, light could shine through, and that miracles, though rare, were worth fighting for.